Baxy's Musical Podcast is brought to you by Canna Provisions. Canna Provisions is an adult-use cannabis dispensary with the largest selection of cannabis products in Western Massachusetts, with locations in Holyoke and in Lee. They offer a warm, unique shopping experience with guides rather than bud tenders. In fact, they're not just a dispensary, they're a destination. Visit cannaprovisions.com, cannaprovisions.com. Please be over 21 and please consume responsibly. And now, Baxy's Musical Podcast.
It's Baxy's Musical Podcast.
Welcome back to Baxy's Musical Podcast. You know, on more than a few occasions over the years, I have completely stumbled upon an artist that I knew nothing about. And within a few short minutes of diving into their music, I became fixated. And those few short minutes would then quickly become a few short months. And what I often discovered is that these same artists have been dangling right in front of my face all along. I just didn't connect the dots. The same is true with my guest today, the wonderful Malka Speigel. In the early 1980s, Malka Speigel was the bass player and singer for the band Minimal Compact, a band from Tel Aviv, Israel, that had relocated to Amsterdam. This was a band that I remember playing at my college radio station back in the mid-'80s without really knowing very much about them or who they were. Ironically, this was also the same period of time I discovered, among other things, the band Wire, one of the most uniquely influential bands of the first wave of punk rock in the 1970s. And while Wire was and has been one of my favorite bands, what I did not know is that Malka Speigel was married to Wire's guitarist, singer, songwriter Colin Newman. I just never put it all together. Nevertheless, it's a union of people that makes total sense, since these are two people of incredible originality who have collaborated with and have inspired each other for the remainder of their long and productive careers. When I tell you that Malka Speigel has released some astonishingly incredible music, it's not bullshit. I mean it. Between her music with Minimal Compact to her collaborations with Colin and the band Githead to the ambient product known as Immersion to her incredible work, Malka Speigel has created an absolutely gorgeous body of work that is totally worth pursuing. Her latest project is the release of a new album called Gliding and Hiding. This is an album that combines the music of her 2014 EP Gliding with her re-recorded 1994 mini album Hiding, the result of which is a truly fantastic, totally cohesive collection of one of post-punk's true maverick talents. And so it is my pleasure to spend a few minutes with Malka Speigel on Baxy's Musical Podcast. Malka, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good. I have been listening to Gliding and Hiding for a better part of a week and a half now.
Oh,
and
cool.
and I absolutely love it. Even though it's older material and some of it's been reworked, there's a timelessness about this music. Tell me about the decision to combine these two EPs together, because it's an extraordinary release.
Thank you. I mean, it makes me happy that you say it's timeless, because I hate sort of going back, if you know what I mean. I don't like the idea of sort of recycling and all that. So, I judge it on how timeless something is. So I'm very happy to hear that. And yeah, it was kind of a practical decision to start with, because we had the Gliding EP, which is my favorite kind of sounding record I released under my name. And we said, okay, let's release it on vinyl. It never came out on a physical format. And then Colin thought, well, it'd be better to do like an album format. So then we decided to see how it feels to work on the Hide material and see if we can rework it, because it sounds a bit dated, the original, the sound. So, and yeah, hopefully it sounds like they belong together.
Now that some of the songs from Hiding have been redone, it does sound like a very cohesive record. I mean, I love the song "Tall Gray Buildings," "Returning the Wheel" at the end of the album, and I just want. I mean, it sounds like these records were really meant to be together from the
That's so
very
cool.
beginning. Yeah, no, I'm delighted to tell you about that. Yeah, I know you don't like going back, but I have to for a second here because I remember playing Minimal Compact back in college, and
Oh, wow.
this would have been in 80, 86, 87, somewhere around there.
Right.
And I think the song that we were playing at the college station at the time was Nuclear Twist.
Okay.
And unfortunately, the band kind of broke up not too far past that, and we never got a chance to see you guys play live in the States. My understanding, and just correct me on this if I got this way off. My understanding is there had been visa problems which had prevented you from coming into the States.
It's
And
correct. I mean, actually, we had suitcases ready, so we were told about a day before. It was, what was that? I forgot what it's called, but there used to be uh, some kind of a event every year in the States where you brought all the kind of cool bands to play. I forgot what it's called. It's a long time ago. And the last minute, we were refused visas for a stupid reason that, I don't know. At the time, they were weird about letting foreign bands play. They want to give space to American bands, but you can't replace one with the other. It's a
right.
stupid argument. But yeah, it's true.
Well,
It kind of broke our spirit a little bit. And because we kind of did well in Europe and America was the next kind of step. And when it didn't happen, it kind of almost led towards the band not continuing.
yeah,
So yeah.
it had to be an exasperating moment to be like you said, your bags are packed, you're ready to go, you're looking to break into the U.S. market, and to have it suddenly taken away from you. I mean, I'm not surprised. I don't know if too many bands would have survived that, no matter how cohesive you guys may have been at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly we were kind of like achieved quite a lot. And as happens to many bands, you start kind of innocent and passionate. And the more successful you become, the more, in some ways, it pulls you apart, somehow, which is kind of absurd, but that's how it works. So we needed the next step, which didn't happen.
It's interesting because I think a lot of Americans just don't think of Israel as being like a fertile ground for musical culture, but Tel Aviv is it really is like a vibrant cultural center of
It is now, but at the time it was a desert in terms of music, especially. We left. I mean, I wasn't even a musician when we left. We just left because it was so boring, and everything we loved musically was from the outside.
right.
So we definitely, there was not much going on. I mean, nowadays we have a radio show, so we kind of look at new music, and there's quite a lot of young artists from Israel who are not looking to sound like abroad, if you know what I mean. They're kind of more original, which is a good thing.
Was I mean, you say it was kind of like a creative desert at the time, but was it particularly difficult for women who were interested in
Oh,
music?
definitely. I mean, I didn't even imagine that I can be in a band because I couldn't play. Technically, I thought like in Israel at the time, you had to be like really good at technically to be able to play. And when we went to Amsterdam and we used to go every week to gigs, and there were lots of bands that were really interesting and powerful, but they were not technically anything impressive. And I thought, wow, I can relate to that. And I still am the same now after all those years. I never practice or bother with technique, which, yeah, it's partly laziness, but yeah.
Well, it's funny that you would wind up with Colin Newman, because punk music back in the UK in the 70s didn't start off all that different either. There was a lot of bands that didn't know what the hell they were doing. They just
Totally. I mean,
there's a lot of interesting parallels between what you may have experienced coming from Tel Aviv to Amsterdam to what he must have experienced in London back many years ago.
true. I mean, we both don't consider technique as something important. So we're similar in that way. And yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, we had a copy of a Wire album in Tel Aviv before we left. So I was aware of Wire already.
I've been a big fan of Wire for a long time, and since 1985, the two of you and Colin, have been almost constant collaborators artistically and musically, and it seems as though You guys have both inspired each other and drawn a lot out of each other creatively. Tell me how the two of you discovered that level of chemistry.
It's really hard to say. I mean, from the very early time we've been together, we started on a very basic kind of level, recording to cassette or something. But I was used to play, always play. So minimal compact, we used to entertain ourselves playing together, not necessarily for any purpose, but for pleasure. And I think Colin came from a different kind of discipline. He used to write songs, and Meyer would play them. So I think it was kind of fascinating for him to kind of jam and create music from in that way. And yeah, we started very early and never stopped, really.
I've been spending the last week or so really kind of digging down deeper into that period from minimal compact until now, trying to just to reacquaint myself with your music. Like I said, when minimal compact wasn't able to come here, it was almost like, well, I didn't know enough about the band to say I'm going to follow this for years. So to going back on it was actually a lot of fun because there was just so much interesting music that you had produced, stuff that, while it's experimental in a lot of ways, it's also really accessible sounding stuff. Like it's the kind of music that you could put on and relax or drive to. It just for a listener, it's like almost a real nice practical reason to grab a Githead record or any of your records or even the stuff that he's done with Wire since then. And I think that's
Yeah.
actually kind of, I don't know if it's by design or you're really just kind of doing it for yourselves, but from a listener's point of view, that's what I get out of your music. There's really an accessibility about it, which is wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we just follow our instinct, really, and it's the kind of music we like as well. So I guess not directly from anything specific, but we are influenced by that mixture of experimental and catchy and sort of pop and experimenting at the same time.
I really fell in love with Githead. I thought that was just a phenomenal project between you and Colin and the others that were involved in it. Tell me about that project in particular, and how does it differ from when you started to do the project with Immersion?
Well, immersion is just Colin and myself, and we so close as people. We just somehow create this music without really uh, any barriers, if I can say that. While Githead is a proper band, and we created the music together between us, we were very easy with each other. I mean, Robin comes from completely different background. He's like Mr. Scanner, he's like doing proper art stuff and more kind of noise electronic stuff. Max is the drummer of Minimal Compact. So it was a fascinating kind of putting together people that unlikely to work together, but it worked because when we stood and played, we just stood and played. Well, Max was sitting, but yeah, yeah, it was just playing together and coming up with songs and then recording them. We played live as well. I mean, the problem with Githead is that Robin is doing a lot of art projects which are booked in advance. Max lives in Amsterdam, so
Mhm.
it became really hard to continue in terms of if you're in a band, you want to be on the road, you want to be constantly doing stuff, and that got difficult. But
Yeah.
we're all good friends.
When you're writing together with Colin, or even on your own, or even when he's writing it on, I mean, I would imagine there's kind of there has to be some level of negotiation. Here's a song. Where does it go? Does it go in my album? Does it go in your album? Does it go to this project or
Uh,
another? How does that work between the two of you?
I think we start knowing what project we're working on, because otherwise it just becomes endless. I mean, we can play guitars, we can play keyboards. It becomes, although Immersion got more guitars, and when we do solo stuff, we have electronic stuff, but we do start being aware of which project we're starting. And it's quite practical because we have a studio and needs to have some kind of order. I mean, I come from just playing for pleasure, but we need to have some kind of decision. And let's say we're working on Immersion, so we have a feeling of what Immersion is or where it might go, and then we kind of work from that. And it starts with a kind of I don't know if you call it jamming, sounds a bit whatever, but we just play and then we judge it as it goes, and it as it builds up we make decisions. So the more you build it up, the more you kind of use your judgment rather than your instinct, if you know what I mean.
I do. What's interesting to me is I'm a married man. I love my wife to pieces, but how could we work together, creatively like that without, you know, having it either, positively or negatively affect our relationship? I think it must say a lot about the relationship that the two of you have together, where you can be as creative as you choose to be, but at the same time also understanding of where the pieces fit. That's actually, I think, a pretty interesting idea, because a lot of musical partnerships don't necessarily survive
I
that
know.
kind of dynamic.
I think partly, first of all, we started that way. So we fell in love, and, more or less straight away as we started living together, we were making music. So it kind of, we grew as a couple, and our music grew with us together.
Mm.
So, and I think we don't have big ego between us when it comes to music. I mean, I'm used to in bands, there's always big egos and things are never spoken, or people feel resentful but never say it, and people feel it becomes a power game sooner or later. I don't think there's a band in the world that doesn't have a little bit or a lot of that. And when you're a couple and you're very, very open, you kind of lose that. And I used to think that tension is important, like Lennon McCartney, there's a kind of tension. And but I think from working with Colin and being very easy, I think it's fine. You can be creative and do interesting stuff and not have tension.
Yeah,
or
I think sometimes, healthy collaboration can also pull out a lot of artistic creativity as well, just as much as, hating the next guy in the room.
it's a different effect. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys, as both of you, you and Colin, and in all of the iterations that you've had during your career, breaking into the U.S. market, I don't get the sense that's always been it's something that is terribly motivating to you. But in a way, when you talk about Minimal Compact being denied entry through visa issues, and even Wire, they were able to come to the States and perform a couple times. I mean, I remember seeing them back in the '80s, but it's not like either band necessarily lent themselves to great commercial
Uh, well,
notice.
when Wire play, they do draw audience in many cities, and they've been playing over the years quite a lot. Yeah, it's all relative, of course. So, but I think it's quite hard, the American market. It's so big and quite mainstream mainly. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we did an immersion tour coast to coast, which was amazing. Not to a lot of audience, but it was one of the best experiences I ever had, driving from LA to New York and stopping in many places in between and playing was amazing.
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned by talking to a number of musicians and bands is that when they're doing it for themselves, and they're doing it either for the art or whatever, that winds up being a hell of a lot more satisfying to them personally than if the motivation is we need a hit in the United States, or
Oh, yeah.
we need a sold out tour. It's like, that's all very well and good, but is the moment you start to think that way is the moment you've placed undue pressure and expectation, which undermines everything that you can accomplish.
Totally. But that's why I was talking about minimal compact. We
Yeah.
got to a point where we need a hit, we need to go with a major label and blah, blah, blah. And you lose your innocence, your instinct, you become calculated, and that's not very interesting.
You're also a rather accomplished visual artist. Tell me about that, and how you've tied music and visual art together during your career.
Um, I started with music first, and I discovered a photography which is called lomography, which is kind of like analog, a very specific look. And it completely relates to how I like to make music, which is you don't think about it, you're not technical about it, you just shoot. It's a very instinctive, quick, before your brain get engaged, you're taking a picture. And that's how I do it till now, you know. I mean, lomography, I don't know if you can look it up. It's like it started by some Austrian student who discovered a Lomo camera. Lomo was a factory in St. Petersburg, Russia, and they made compact camera, I think early 80s, which was kind of for the masses, but actually it had a very interesting lens that produced some weird pictures. So it kind of created a cult following. I mean, there's lots of kind of cameras that were created after that from lomography. But yeah, it kind of, for me, it was like music. I suddenly could take pictures and it was instinctive and I didn't have to think about it. And I don't have to, you know, yeah, accomplish. I mean, I had some exhibitions, but it's not my aim.
I did follow links from some of the press stuff that I had gotten and looked at some of those photographs, and they're really interesting. What's being done with lomography. I think it's a very very cool medium.
Definitely.
Artistically, yeah, it's really impressive. I mean, you say you started off with music. Do you have a preference of which one that you prefer to do? I mean, or do you even separate them like that?
I couldn't say. I mean, it's like two different things. They feel similar when I do it, but they're both very different way of expressing yourself somehow. I mean, music and visual. So no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, yeah, I take pictures as I walk, we go for a walk every day. I take pictures. It's almost like, breathing. You just go click, click, click. While music you play and it gives you a certain feeling. So they are quite different emotionally, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
What's apparent to me by looking at those photographs and then listening to the music that you have produced and Colin has produced is there is an atmospheric sense to all of it. I know
Right.
Wire's always been said to be minimalistic. That you could argue that all day long, but there's an atmospheric presence in your art visually and musically. Is that intentional? Is that what drew you into lomography, or am I, way off on that one?
No, I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of was instinctive. I saw a program on BBC 4, which is kind of the art BBC, and there was a program about this weird lomography. And as soon as I saw the pictures that it produces, I was like, that's me. That's me. And I was desperate to find this camera, and somehow I find myself as part of that movement. And yeah, there's a certain mystery, I guess, to music that I love and the pictures that I love.
With the new album, Gliding and Hiding, after listening to a lot of other stuff that you've done, to me, it's a perfectly great entry point for anyone who's interested in finding out more of your catalog. It's a really great place to start, and even going back to the minimal compact stuff, which is still available, still out there for people to enjoy. Is there any sense of you being able to maybe tour with that record? Would you consider new material out there, or are you not at that point?
I mean, touring comes with demand. I don't know how much, there is demand for, you know, I mean, the market is so crowded now with lots of people. Everybody's touring and releasing albums, and some people get much bigger promotion. I mean, we do it kind of ourselves with the help of few
Yeah.
people. Yeah, I mean, we toured Rosh Balata, my original album. So we played some gigs in Tel Aviv, and that was great. We found technically a way to do it because it was created, was impossible to recreate just playing. So we found a way to combine instruments, and so it's not out of the question. But yeah, but I'm definitely interested in making new music.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
Now you do all of this at home now, right? You're not going to different studios necessarily, but you're doing it all in a home studio.
Yeah, mainly. I mean, we recorded, there's a nano cluster project which we collaborate with other artists, and you should check it out. It's quite an interesting collaboration. Came out last year, and in that case, we went to a studio only recently and played with the drummer Matt Schultz from Holly F and
Hmm.
other musicians. So yeah, we do go out, but we're very comfortable here, and we can choose the time when to do it, and that's good.
I know since the pandemic, at least here in the States, a lot of people have, decided to, work from home and work remotely. I mean, your commute to work is probably what, 10, 12 feet from 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 the
more or
kitchen
less.
table.
Well, we cross the little courtyard and yeah, there it is. So yeah, it's part of our house and yeah, it's good like that. I mean, sometimes it's good to go somewhere else and it kind of throws you into a new environment, which can be a good challenge. And but yeah, we do that sometimes, but
Yeah.
mainly we do it here.
Well, I like I said, I absolutely love gliding and hiding. It sounds so great, and there is legitimately a timelessness about it. And I think people, if they go and listen to it, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Best of luck with it. I like I said,
Thank you.
it is wonderful, and I'm so glad to have talked to you about it because I have been I have been listening to it constantly, and
Oh,
it's just
thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you very much. It makes me happy.
Absolutely, Malcolm. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you.
I
Bye.
appreciate it. Bye now. The name of Malka Spiegel's new album is Gliding and Hiding. You should also check out her radio show with her husband, Colin Newman, called Swimming in Sound. Thanks to Canna Provisions for supporting the podcast. You can support them by going to cannaprovisions.com. Thanks for listening. You can email me at bags@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think, and I'd love to have you back for the next episode of Baxy's Musical Podcast.